All right, let's talk about something that's, well, it's really tough, but also super important. When it comes to healthcare, we don't have unlimited resources. So how on earth do we decide who gets treatment? It's a question that affects every single one of us, so let's dive in.
Everything we're about to discuss really boils down to one simple but huge question. Can you actually put a price tag on a human life? I think for almost everyone, our gut reaction is a loud, clear, no way.
And, that's a sentiment most of us share, right? It just feels wrong to talk about life and money in the same sentence. It feels sacred. But as we're going to see, the real world of healthcare makes things a whole lot more complicated.
But here's the thing. As much as we hate the idea, our healthcare systems all over the world have to make these kinds of choices every single day. Why? Because resources are scarce. We're talking limited money, a limited number of doctors, not enough hospital beds. That scarcity forces some incredibly difficult decisions. Think about it like this. Why isn't there a life-saving defibrillator on every single corner of every single street? Well, because the cost to buy and maintain all of them would be absolutely massive. Or what about a brand new cancer drug that costs a fortune, hundreds of thousands of dollars, but on average only gives patients a few more months of life? Is that worth it? These aren't just hypotheticals. They're the real-world dilemmas that force us to weigh health against cost.
So how in the world can we make these choices in a way that's fair and logical? Well, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the main economic tools that help us do just that. We'll start with the most basic method, just counting years of life saved. Then we'll get a little more sophisticated and add in the idea of quality of life. After that, we'll see what happens when you try to turn everything into dollars and cents. And finally, we'll bring it all together. All right, first up is the most straightforward approach, which is called cost-effectiveness analysis. The idea here is pretty simple, really. It's all about getting the most bang for your buck when it comes to healthcare.
Now, what's really clever about cost-effectiveness analysis, or CEA, is that it kind of sidesteps that big emotional question of putting a price on life. It doesn't do that. Instead, it measures health benefits in simple physical units, like years of life saved. So the question it's really asking is, for this particular treatment, how much does it cost to buy one extra year of life?
Okay, let's make this really concrete. Imagine you're in charge of a health budget for 100 patients, and you've got 3 new therapies to choose from. Therapy A is the cheapest, and it gets you 30 extra life years for your group. Therapy B costs more, but gets you more years. And Therapy C is the most expensive, and also the most effective. Which one do you pick?
So you might be tempted to just look at the average cost, right? But that doesn't really tell the whole story. To make a smart comparison, we have to calculate something called the incremental cost-effectiveness ratio, or ICER for short. Basically, this tells you how much you're paying for each additional year of life you get when you upgrade from a cheaper option to a more expensive one. It's the price of progress.
It's a really methodical process, almost like a checklist. First, you figure out the ICER for each therapy compared to the next cheapest one. Then, and this is key, you look for any options that are just a bad deal. Economists call them dominated options, and you kick them out. After that, you recalculate the ICERs with what's left, and you've got your final ranking.
Now, this is where things get a little counterintuitive, but it's super important. In our little example, Therapy B actually gets eliminated. You might be wondering why. Well, it's because the cost for each extra year of life you buy by going from A to B is actually more expensive than the cost per year of just skipping B and going straight from A to C. So jumping to Therapy C is a better deal for buying those additional life years. It makes Therapy B an inefficient choice. It's a tricky concept called extended dominance.
Okay, so this CEA thing, it seems pretty logical, doesn't it? You're just ranking treatments by how efficiently they add years to people's lives. But, and there's always a but, just counting years has some huge blind spots.
And here's the biggest flaw. CEA can only compare apples to apples. It can only compare things measured in the same unit. So how do you compare a program that saved 1 year of life to another program that restores someone's eyesight for 10 years? CEA has no clue. It can't tell you. And it also can't tell you if even the best option is worth the money at all. I mean, maybe we should be spending that money on schools instead. CEA just can't answer that question. So, to get past these limitations, economists came up with a much smarter tool. And that brings us to our next approach, cost-utility analysis. This is where we introduce a much better way to measure health benefits.
And that better yardstick is the QALY, the Quality Adjusted Life Year. And honestly, this is a game-changing idea. It's a single number that combines both the length of life, and the quality of that life. So 1 year in perfect health is worth exactly 1 QALY. But, say, a year spent dealing with a serious chronic illness might be worth only half a QALY. And just like that, we can finally compare apples and oranges. We can compare saving a life to improving vision on the very same scale.
And this right here is where the rubber meets the road. This is a real-world list from the UK's health system that ranks all sorts of treatments by how much it costs to get one single QALY. And the range is just mind-blowing. At the cheap end, simple advice from a doctor to quit smoking costs just over £200 per QALY, but at the other extreme, some complex surgeries can cost over £100,000 for that same single QALY.
So with a list like that, where do you draw the line? I mean, you have to stop somewhere, right? Well, the UK's National Health Service has a rule of thumb. Generally, if a new treatment costs somewhere between £20,000 and £30,000 for every QALY it produces, it's considered a good deal. It's likely to get funded. It's a practical, maybe a little controversial, but very clear way to make these calls.
But, even the amazing QALY can't answer the really big question: how much should a country spend on healthcare overall? To answer that, we have to bring out the biggest gun in the economist's toolkit: cost-benefit analysis. This is where we take that uncomfortable step of trying to turn everything into money. The whole idea behind cost-benefit analysis, or CBA, is pretty bold. The goal is to put a price tag on literally everything. Not just the obvious costs like the drugs and the hospital stay, but also all of the benefits. The value of a longer life, the value of being in less pain, the value of better health. All of it gets converted into one single monetary value.
And once you've done that, the decision becomes almost laughably simple. If the money value of the benefits is bigger than the money value of the costs, you do it. The project is a go. And the huge advantage of this is that CBA can do what the other two methods can't. It can tell you whether any of these projects are worth doing at all, which is the key to setting the entire healthcare budget.
Okay, so that was a lot to take in. We've gone through 3 different ways to tackle this really, really hard problem. Let's just do a quick recap of these powerful, even if they're imperfect, tools. You can really see the evolution here, right? We start with CEA, which is simple. It just ranks options based on the cost per life you're gained. Then we have CUA, which is a major upgrade. It uses QALYs, so it can rank completely different kinds of health treatments against each other. And finally, there's CBA, the most powerful of all. By turning everything into money, it helps us decide how much we should be spending in the first place. Now, it is so important to remember that none of these systems are perfect. I mean, how could they be? We're talking about putting a number on the quality of life or a dollar value on life itself. It's filled with ethical landmines. But here's the thing. The alternative isn't some perfect world where everyone gets every possible treatment. The alternative is making these same tough decisions, but doing it behind closed doors, based on politics or just a gut feeling. The whole point of these frameworks is to make those unavoidable choices as open, as fair, and as transparent as possible. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. A question that gets to the very heart of it all. Each of these tools we've looked at really prioritizes a different value. So, if you were the one holding the purse strings, what would you choose? Should we focus on saving the absolute most lives, no matter the cost? Or should we aim to maximize the overall well-being and quality of life for the whole population? Or is the goal to get the best overall economic value for society? There really is no easy answer. Thanks for joining us.